I'm currently in Sri Lanka, exploring its two main public aquariums with my grandfather. We'll be going to Waterorld in Kelaniya and the National Zoo in Dehiwala to see what the country has to offer in terms of monster fish. And spoiler alert, there are some absolute monsters. Welcome back to Obsidian Exotics. So let me start off by saying that this video is going to be something really special to me, so let me give you some context as to why. Now, if you don't feel like hearing me yap for the next few minutes and just want to skip ahead to the content, just skip to this timestamp and you'll be all good to go. And for everyone else that's still watching, let's get started, shall we? So I'm sure you've noticed that I haven't posted a video in a very long time. Well, the reason for that is your boy just got married. I travelled back home to Sri Lanka, where I was born and raised, to have a traditional Sri Lankan wedding ceremony, as well as a Western reception in the afternoon. So you can probably imagine that this took a lot of planning and a lot of effort to coordinate. Anyway, after the wedding was all wrapped up, we spent the last 30 days exploring this beautiful island with most of my friends that flew over to celebrate my wedding. And now that it's almost time for me to head back to Australia, I've decided to tick off a little side quest that I've wanted to do for a very long time. In my 25 years of existence on this planet, I spent the entire first half of my life growing up in Sri Lanka. A lot of my spare time was spent at the local paddy fields and creeks trying to catch little fish to keep in my fish tank. My obsession with wildlife, more specifically my obsession with fish, all started because of one man, my grandfather. He always told me that keeping fish was something that was part of my DNA, and that it's something that had been passed down from many generations before him. And given that my grandfather, my uncle, myself, as well as my little cousins have all become fish keepers, I reckon there's definitely some truth to it. And once I migrated to Australia, I decided to double down on my obsession to the point where it's now my full-time career. And I can't help but to think that I owe it all to my grandfather for laying down the foundations to the empire that I hope to build in the future. So now, with my grandfather getting older, I wanted to have something we can both look back on, where both of us are in our element, doing what we do best, talk about fish. Anyway, that's enough backstory. So, Sri Lanka has two major public aquariums. The first one is Waterorld in Kelaniya, which mainly houses a massive range of freshwater fish, as well as some saltwater fish and birds. And the second place is the National Zoo of Sri Lanka, located in Dehiwala, which also has a surprisingly impressive collection of freshwater fish. I also found out that my grandfather has never visited Waterworld before, so it seemed fitting that we started off with that one first, since he used to be the one that always took me to new aquariums when I was a little kid.
Alright, so I gotta come clean. This is actually a video I started making all the way back in like September last year, and I never got around to actually finishing this video. Like, since I got married, so much has happened. I started working on it, and then like, you'll find out in future videos why I've been so busy, but anyway, here we are, we're finally finishing the video. But yeah, walking through, I mean, you start off, there's a lot of marine fish straight off the bat. Sri Lanka's not exactly known for having like a big public aquarium that has a lot of marine fish, so Waterworld was probably one of the first ones that tried to showcase a fair few marine fish. I remember going there as a little kid. I was probably maybe 8-10 years old, and I remember seeing, you know, a massive range of marine fish at the time, but right now I guess they've expanded onto more freshwater things as well. It's really cool to see these large exotic fish that are thousands of dollars in Australia, but over in Sri Lanka, those silver arowanas are probably about a couple thousand rupees each, which is only about 10 Australian dollars. So it's pretty crazy to see the price difference as well. And having very easygoing laws, I guess, you're allowed to get a lot of these fish into the country. obviously me going around with my grandfather, we're gonna check out every little puddle that we come across, just to see if there's any fish in there. Some cool looking rainbow fish too, which is something you don't really see too often in Sri Lanka. We see a lot of big monster fish, but things like these Bosemani rainbows or the red rainbows, that's not something you usually come across at your local aquarium shop. And of course, there's plenty of arowanas, especially really good looking ones, like this super red arowana right here. You can see it's got a little bit of drop eye, but the colors on it are super nice. Like this is just basic lighting, just sunlight and a little bit of light. The camera makes it look a little bit bluish, but in person, it's just normal white light. Again, more marine fish. I believe that's a majestic angel. I'm not the most well-versed when it comes to marines, but I know enough to get around. Oh yeah, this was a really cool looking tank. So they had like 4 different African cichlid tanks that were connected together. So it sort of wraps around the entire corner, I guess. You can see they're doing some construction on it at the moment. So I assume they're gonna have some sort of backdrop or make it look like a cliff face sort of thing. And again, African cichlids aren't something you see too often in Sri Lanka. So it's really cool to see these things at a public aquarium. Now this has to be my favorite tank at Waterworld. There's 4 massive Peruvian sharks that just cruise around. I believe the tank's probably about maybe 20 foot long by maybe I'd say 8 foot front to back. But like the videos don't really do them justice. Like they look so much bigger in person. I've actually got 4 baby ones growing out at the moment that I hope to have on display at some stage. I'll be making a video on them soon as well. But yeah, I probably sat there for like 15-20 minutes just staring at the Peruvian sharks. Because even me being next to them, you don't see how big they are. Like I put my hand next to it. It's probably like, I reckon they're about 1 meter or maybe 1.2 meters. It just looks smaller in the video, but they're so cool. One of my favorite fish, especially in a giant monster tank. They pretty much look like sharks, hence the name. Such a cool fish. Now here's another fish you won't see too often, especially in Australia, a marbled lungfish. I did see a few of them at aquariums in Sri Lanka, so they must be somewhat common, but here in Australia, like it's just a dream to be able to get one. Really cool looking fish, and these guys have been around since the dinosaurs. Now that's a cool fish. Giant snakehead, of course. I don't know if you guys are a fan of river monsters, but I've literally watched all their episodes, and their episode on the snakehead is definitely a must watch. These are really cool looking fish. Like you don't see the size of these in the video. I keep saying that throughout the video, but obviously like seeing it in person. I highly recommend you go down to Waterworld if you're ever in Sri Lanka. It's definitely a must see for an aquarium hobbyist, especially if you're a monster fish keeper. Now here's an amazing fish that I've heard so much about, but this is my first time actually seeing one in person. It's an abba knifefish. These things are extremely aggressive, so you can only keep them by themselves, but awesome looking fish. I believe they're in the same family as electric eels, because the electric eels are technically on the knifefish family, but yeah, these guys get like 4 foot plus and kill pretty much anything you chuck in the tank. They also had these weird tanks up in the ceiling as you walk through, and they had big fish like that alligator guy that you just saw. And of course, going back to marine fish, there's a really nice looking snowflake eel in there. I think they're just starting to expand their marine section to what they want it to look like, because there's not too much going on at the moment, but there's a lot of tanks with a lot of space. They did have some small tanks separated out just to showcase small invertebrates, like this redline shrimp. I also really like the way they had the layout design, because you walk through certain areas and you come into openings where you got like waterfall features like this. Seems really weird that they keep putting like marine tanks next to freshwater tanks, so it's not like a marine section and a freshwater section. But then you also get things like this brackish tank with monoargents in there and some glassfish as well. Then you sort of walk back out of the cave, and as you go through, you can see there's some like buttercophori in there, and then right next to that we've got some lionfish. It's still really cool to see all these species, but it's just weird the way they've laid it out, I guess. And of course, every time we come across like a big pond, me and my grandfather would stop and just stare at the fish, I guess. I mean, there's some really big ID sharks in there and a big giant gourami. That's probably what we're talking about here, because that's my first big monster fish that I kept. My grandfather bought it for me from like the local market when I was probably like 4 or 5 years old. So I've always had a soft spot for giant gouramis. And then they had this really cool mixed arowana tank. So they had like Asian arowanas mixed with silver arowanas. There's also some albino silvers in there. So you can see there's some crossback arowanas there, some golden crossbacks. And then you'll see some albino silvers come up. There you go. So albino silver and golden crossbacks. And something you wouldn't really see in the wild, but most monster fish keepers keep them all together anyway. Got some tarpon. I haven't actually seen decent sized tarpon. I've seen babies, but I've never seen, like, these are probably about 2 foot long. I know they get significantly larger, but it's probably the biggest I've seen in person. Oh yeah, these are really interesting. Stinging catfish. Now I used to go in the local creeks and catch fish, and every now and then you'd get stabbed by one and it really, really hurts. They got like venomous spikes basically. So I guess they're not quite stinging catfish, but if you get cut by any of them, that venom basically makes it extremely painful. These are really cool. One of my favorite fish, platinum alligator gars. Another shame that we can't keep them here in Victoria. I know the guys in New South Wales can keep them, but in Australia, something like that would probably be like $6,000 to $7,000. Yeah, one day. Eventually, I might even set something up in Sri Lanka just so I can keep all these rare exotic fish. Like, I'd love to keep platinum gars. I'd love to keep some giant snakeheads. A lot of these stuff that are unfortunately noxious in Australia, I'd love to keep in Sri Lanka. Some nice peacock bass, that's something you don't see too often over there as well. Some azules and kelberry. More marine fish, I guess. I'm not too sure what they're called. I might ask Toby what they're called and I might put it on the screen or something. I believe that's a stonefish. Scorpion fish, that's what it is, scorpion fish. We've actually had them at some of the shops I used to work at. And then another thing we can't keep in Australia, these are the genetically modified, like they call them glowfish, but they're basically genetically engineered to have, like, I believe it's jellyfish genes and certain genes that give them that luminous color, and they just have a whole section just for them. And then once you walk out of that area, you just have these small little tanks that sort of go on for about, I'd say, maybe like 50, 60 meters, but they're not massive tanks, but each one has an interesting fish in it or an interesting group of fish in it. So it's still really cool to see. So I guess they try and get in as much fish into one section as possible. It's pretty cool seeing golden torpedo barbs. Like I've seen a handful of them come mixed in with standard torpedo barbs, but seeing a tank just full of golden torpedoes is really cool. Ooh, that's another first one for me. Asian red-tailed catfish. I've never seen one in person before. So here we are checking out some rainbow fish again. I believe that's some lacustrous rainbows in there. Again, it's really interesting to see my grandfather really intrigued by these, because like these are fish you don't see too often. But being in Australia for a while, I've seen plenty of rainbows. And then, yep, back to some glowfish, as they call. These are danios that have been genetically modified to have those colors. Oh yeah, and they also had some ropefish in there. Now this is my first time seeing ropefish as well. They're from the bicha family, but they're just a really long looking bicha. And of course they had a cobra snakehead, I believe it's called. I think it's got some sort of spinal issue, but still the colors on that thing is crazy. And then yeah, nice little water features as we go around again. Honestly, man, I'm really thinking about setting up something in Sri Lanka just so I can keep like all the snakeheads and all the big monster fish. So much, like it'll be so much cheaper too. And the fact that I frequent Sri Lanka probably once a year, I reckon I could probably pull it off. So who knows, maybe in the future I'll set something up in Sri Lanka. What do you reckon? Some Congo tetras, again, more things we don't see in Sri Lanka. Ooh, this is really cool. Vitatus tigerfish. This is not the largest species, but they're still a really mean looking fish. And they also had a Walago catfish as well. It's, again, first time seeing one in person, even though they're native to Sri Lanka as well. And of course, giant gouramis. Every time we see giant gouramis, me and my grandfather would just stop and stare at them for like 10, 15 minutes. Because that's pretty much where I got started. So every time I see giant gourami, it's one of my favorite fish. I don't particularly like the greys and the pinks too much. The red tails are probably my favorites, but I can still appreciate like how cool they are. Oh, and that's a really cool looking fish. That's a Dorado catfish, or also called a moonlight catfish. They actually go bright gold as they get bigger. I used to have a small one ages ago, but unfortunately it died when it was still little. Albino pacu. I've actually got some growing up at the moment as well, so I'd like to have them on display at some stage. That's a really big black shark, but it's an albino black shark. I haven't seen one that size before of that color. Obviously some clown knifefish, not the best looking pattern. This is cool, conch catfish. So many fish I'm seeing for the first time. I've read so much about them, I've watched so many videos about them, but being at Waterworld allowed me to be able to see all these cool things for the first time in my life, so I'm really happy to be able to see these things. Eventually, I reckon I'll probably set something up in Sri Lanka because I really want to be able to keep these fish, and you know, it's so achievable over there. I think this room's supposed to be some sort of quarantine room because like a lot of the fish in here are diseases. If not, I mean, that's probably not good because yeah, that angel had white spot, but the room was kept kind of cold as well. So I don't know, maybe they're more sensitive fish, but it was weird. Like tiny little tanks, I guess they're being treated in there. So you walk out into this park area. So the actual aquarium is located right next to the Kelaniya river. So we got all these mangroves and there's so many like little animals living in the mangroves as well. But then you walk out into this tunnel, which is meant to be Sri Lanka's first and longest, I guess, underwater tunnel. And I think it's recently set up because there's not many fish in there. There's like one tiny shark in there and not much else. But I mean, it looks really cool. I reckon once it's set up, it'll look really good. Here's my grandfather making fun of the fact that they didn't have much fish in there. And then he had a little corner there that had like anemones, but not much in there. It was a weird layout, but he's making fun of them this whole time. So he's saying what a waste of space. But it's coming along, I think. I reckon give it a few years, they'll probably have it fully stocked up. But so far, I mean, it's been really great. And they had this like river safari thing where you just get in a bunch of boats, I guess. And as you go through, they've got other aquariums set up along the edges, and they also have like birds living in the enclosure as well. Not exactly the biggest bird expert, but I think those are Canadian geese. Oh yeah, they also had some red-eared sliders perfectly lined up on the edge there, which I thought was interesting. And I believe they had some big alligator gar. There we go, some massive alligator gars. They actually look pretty small in the video, but trust me, they're big. And then I believe there's some more African cichlids. Here's me and my grandfather talking about African cichlids. And yeah, I guess more tunnels. There's a bunch of tunnels that it sort of goes through, and as you go through it, you can look up, and there's actually fish tanks on the ceiling of the tunnel. So you look up and you see like weird like glowfish and a few bits and pieces up there, but I guess an interesting concept. And then you go around this water feature. The whole ride is actually designed pretty well. The area is designed to look like a rainforest, so it feels like you're paddling a boat through a rainforest. I think me and my grandfather just noticed that there's actual fish living in the section where the boat's supposed to go. So they must have jumped out from the aquariums on either side, and somehow they've spawned in. There's a bunch of African cichlids that were living perfectly fine in the track of the boat. And we got some albino pacu and some regular pacu and some red-tailed catfish. This is sort of the big monster display that I'd like to have as well, like red-tailed catfish. I'd like to have some platinum red-tailed catfish, maybe an arapaima or two, tiger shovelnose, pacu of different kinds, different colors, and that's pretty much a set tank. That would pretty much be my perfect monster setup. Weirdly, they also had some like tiger barbs amongst all the monster fish. Like the whole theming thing is a bit weird there, but you still see a large range of fish. Like you go from monster fish down to tiny little tetras within 10 meters of each other. And then this was a really cool feature, a waterfall, and it had Peruvian sharks in it. So they're just circling the waterfall. It looks really, really cool. That's something I'd like to actually set up at my house if possible. And of course, some koi. Koi and red-tailed giant gourami, not a mix I thought I would see, but it looks really good. So here we are admiring the rainbow fish again. And there was this random white rabbit in just like the corner of the river. I don't even know how it got there. I don't think it can escape from there either, so because it's water everywhere around. So I guess it lives there. And a few random peacocks flying around as well. I believe these are pied peacocks. Of course, the lady in front of me tried to scare it for some reason. But yeah, overall, I reckon it was a really good experience. Some of it's still under construction, but I'm keen to see how it turns out. All right, so this was their final, largest exhibit, and I reckon this is probably one of my favorites there as well. It had pretty much all the big monster fish you can think of, like alligator gars, red-tailed catfish, arapaimas, and a few other bits and pieces that I'm probably forgetting. But really cool to see. I mean, I think it had like 2 big arapaimas in there, and these fish are like probably 6 foot plus. I know they get significantly bigger, but it was just cool to see an arapaima of that size, like from the side on. Usually you see them in like ponds, so it's really cool to see them from the side on. I guess that pretty much wraps up Waterworld in Kelaniya, and yeah, I'd say it was a really fun experience. It was really cool to be able to show my grandfather around this place instead of what would usually happen when I was a kid, where he'd take me to the local aquariums and show me all the fish that they've got. So it's probably a memory that I'm going to cherish for the rest of my life. And yeah, off to the next place, I guess.